Hey everybody, Edo here, and this is Orcs versus Vikings by Corey Keller. And this is an interesting one, folks, because this is a released Game Crafter product. So this is it sort of looks like a prototype because it's the Game Crafter, but it's not for Kickstarter. There are many games that you can go to the Game Crafter on, and they have a store. And these are indie projects that you can buy with Game Crafter components, but that are effectively intended to be final games and aren't going to retail. So when you buy it, the Game Crafter prints it, you're paying for the print. I think the Game Crafter might get a little money on top of that, and then the creator gets some money. So it's an interesting indie approach. And you know, Corey asked me if I'd take a look, and I said sure. I was like, is it for Kickstarter? He's like, no. And so Orcs versus Villagers is a cooperative worker placement game where you are generating resources in order to craft equipment to then build barricades. And what you're trying to do is barricade the four sides, and it's a little bigger than this, but you're trying to barricade the four sides of your village so that you stop the orcs. And every round, more and more orcs are appearing. They appear at all the different north, south, east, and west, and you need to resolve them. Once they're at your doorstep, you roll a die, and then they move into your actual village and start impacting your locations and inhibiting your ability to use them, and you got to fight them. So you have orcs that are coming in. They're going to come in through all the different gates. You know, whatever. That's a little much, but they're going to come in. And then they'll start spawning or moving into locations, and you'll have to deal with them. If all of the orcs are in the city, or not even in the city, they can be also on the side perimeter. But if all of the orcs have spawned, you lose the game. You're overrun. It's a really nice premise. All of the pieces work together well. I think that it reminded me a little of Robin Hood and the Merry Men, or the Merry Men and the Thieves of Robin Hood, or whatever that game was called. There's a lot of similar concepts in here. It's actually a very neat mixture of crafting for building these barricades, as well as worker placement. You're going to be, again, and then, you know, like you're turning ore into stone, and you can, you know, change anything into anything and get action cards, which give, you know, like our passive abilities, which are over here. You know, and some of it is sort of done and has art, and some of it doesn't. You know, you're at different stages with this, but the game is there, and you have a little. Oh, you also have a number of villagers that can die. There's another way to lose. Sorry. So if you fight orcs, you can die, and it's pretty straightforward. It's red die versus white die. Ties go to the villagers, and there's a morning, afternoon, night progression that happens. So again, lots of interesting systems that worked out here. And interesting to pick it up, you know, feels familiar but different. I think that so for the second part of this video, what I want to do is give Corey some feedback, because I think there are a number of things that can happen now that would improve the product even more. And what's neat, amazing, incredible about the Game Crafter is you can, it's much more like a digital product. He can update the files and make some adjustments, and then the next person who gets it gets those fixes. So I can't do that when I print a bunch of publishing games. So what are those pieces of feedback? And this will go. So if you want to cut it here, it's an independent product by a single person. You know, that's evident, but at the same time, it's an interesting cooperative game. From a gameplay perspective, there's one weird curve where, as you're completing barriers, it's restricting the areas in which the orcs can come in, and it's sort of, the gameplay flow is like hard, and then sort of gets easier, which is okay, but it's just got a weird climax as a game, where typically you'd want it to sort of ramp into the very hardest at the very end, where now it's sort of starts hard and it levels off. But like what it does mean is, if you're not making the right decisions up front, you're in trouble, right? So it works. So that's the review. That's the, like, hey, if you're willing to look past the the fact that it's like printed on paper and, its own little thing, I think you might get a kick out of it. So here's the feedback. One, all sorts of ways you can use your existing components but level them up. You could actually get the board from GameCraft rather than a piece of paper. The tokens are punch-outs, but they could be punch board as opposed to paper. And they have some better little resource components now in the Game Crafter. Again, what that's going to do is make the game look better and feel better, but also more expensive, because in this model, that price gets passed on to the end user. So, up to you. I get the font and the theme. That works. Don't give me this type of font in white over green. Like, this is just not a pleasurable way of reading. So I understand why you have it, and I'm not even criticizing the text of the rules. It's not fun to read this. I use this font for your header font, but for your body, just use a standard font, or at least, increase the sizing a little bit. It just makes it hard to read, and there's no reason for that. One. So that would be easy. Another thing that would be easy is like all of these decks are different. Like this is the Orc deck, yet they all have the same backs. Super annoying. Worst case, just give it a different outline, but like you could also just make the the Orc deck just have an Orcs on the back. Like you don't need to create any new assets, but managing, shuffling, and dealing with all these cards would be a whole lot easier if the backs were different. And that's not going to add any extra cost. You can use your same deck and just cascade it out. The use of the greater than symbol to mean convert as opposed to like an arrow, I think the arrow would be better, or some other thing. But when it's a die to a die, greater than makes more sense. But sometimes for converting, it doesn't. I like the barricades. I like that you have included barricades. So that all works for me, I think. And then, you again, if you have space, make the text bigger, right? Like, it's just things you can do that make it a little easier to use. These I like a lot, right? I see the image, I get the text, I get it, these look more finished, if you know what I mean. So, there was a couple other things. And then component quality would go a long way. And again, that's just leveling up, but it'll make it more expensive, so you should decide what you want to do there. And this worked fine. So yeah, overall, I think that it was neat to check out. And hopefully over time you get some attention and continue to get some support, and maybe some of those fixes getting made. I think the backs, the rule book, and as you can, bumping the component quality would be nice, as well as just some cleaning up of the textures and some of the art like pops and works well, and other places it gets a little muddy, and getting a balance for that I think would be great. So I don't usually go into those details, but it sort of seems like there's an opportunity because this is a game that a file can get fixed, and then it just is better for the next person who buys it. So anyway, that was a little long. This is Orcs versus Vikings. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks. Bye.